Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us for this edition of Eye on New Mexico. Today we're going to talk about an issue that affects all of us, money. And there is no getting around it this time of year. Well, it can get expensive. We're buying gifts for friends and family. We're planning trips to see loved ones. And many of us are giving to charities and churches. So this morning I'm joined now by our guest, Gage Kemsley. He's the Vice President of Oxford Wealth Advisors, to talk to us about money being spent during the holidays. Thank you for coming on.
Absolutely. It's great to be here.
Definitely. So when we talk about this time of year, we know a lot of money is being spent right now, either, in a cold, hard cash or plastic. What are we seeing?
It's fascinating to see how much money we're spending. $720 billion this year.
Wow.
I went, on the way over here, I was doing some math, just plugging it in to see every man, woman, and child in the United States is spending $2,000 on average.
Wow, that is insane.
Holy cow, how can we even afford to do this?
That is crazy. That is a lot of money. It definitely is. Okay, so right now you might have already bought all of your gifts, or you're still planning to get some shopping in this holiday weekend, the few weeks we have left before Christmas.
Absolutely.
But so far this year, shopping has already broken a lot of records, especially when it comes to online sales. Now, a new report from Adobe Analytics shows that online shopping on Black Friday jumped nearly 27% over last year, and that resulted in a total of a little more than $6 billion in online sales on that day. A third of all online sales were made on a mobile device like a smartphone or a tablet. And Amazon is continuing to break its own records also. The company says that this Cyber Monday, just a few days ago, it was the single biggest shopping day in the company's history. Amazon says worldwide, customers bought 18 million toys and 13 million fashion items on Black Friday and Cyber Monday combined. So the so-called Turkey 5, the 5 days starting with Thanksgiving and ending with Cyber Monday, was a hit. Americans bought a lot of stuff during that time.
Off to a huge start here.
Definitely. So when we see that, how much they're buying, more so this year than last year, consumer confidence has got to be pretty high.
Absolutely. Especially moving into Q4, we typically will see that. That's a good thing. We call that the Christmas bump, the Christmas rally. It's interesting to see. We are seeing that now, too, especially with the Turkey 5. Just like you said, we're seeing huge numbers being posted. I think that's a good indicator of how sales will be through the end of the year.
Right. And according to the National Retail Federation, consumers say they will spend an average of $1,007 during this holiday season. That's up about $50 from last year. Now, that organization also predicts that holiday spending this year will reach $720 billion. Gage, you were talking about that just a few seconds ago.
Incredible.
That's up 4% this year. So when we look at these numbers here and all the numbers of things sold and money being spent, what does that tell us?
I think when it comes right down to it, everyone should look at themselves. Everyone should focus on what they can do to help alleviate some of that Christmas spending. It's a good thing. I think it's fantastic. It's a good sign of the economy that we're all comfortable in spending money and putting this money back into the economy. But when it comes right down to it, everyone should focus on their individual circumstances. I think everyone should be budgeting out for their Christmas plan.
So when it comes to people who are, say, winning at money, what do they do? How do they tackle the holiday season?
I think a lot of people know what they are going to do well before they step foot into the stores. That's the number one key. They know what gifts they're looking for. They know about how much they're going to be spending, and if they're really, really good, they'll have the money set aside in their pocket so that they can reach in and just pay for it cash right there.
Right. So cash is always better than swiping out that plastic, right?
Cash is king. They say cash is king. It's the most important thing to do, to stay within a budget, and we want to make sure that we're using cash to do that.
How does one come up with a budget that's specific to their individual and family needs when it comes to this time of year?
It's a good question. I think a lot of people should sit down at the dining room table with a spouse, maybe with children, sit down at the table, grab a pen and paper, and start jotting down some of those specific things. Start jotting down prices so that they know exactly what they could expect. If want lists are getting a little long, it might be good to say, hey, you know what, we need some realistic expectations here. This is what Santa's going to bring. This is what Santa can afford this year. I don't think that there's any problem with that. I think everyone should be living well within their means, and one way to do that is just to go through and budget out exactly what it is that you're wanting to get.
You know, we see a lot of people this time of year in the video that we show just like rushing the stores and buying things. How many of them would you think or say have that budget in mind?
I bet you not very many. I bet you, especially with looking at the Black Friday shoppers specifically that are like pushing on the doors, trying to break them open and everything like that, they're just so focused on grabbing a TV or grabbing a PlayStation or something like that, that they're not focusing on, hey, this is how much money I have to spend on Christmas. I think that it makes a whole lot of sense to not go in blind and to make sure that you know what you're doing.
Okay, so let's check this out here. So Americans spent nearly $6.6 billion last year, and this year they're expected to spend a lot more. As we were talking, that $720 billion mark, like that's just mind-blowing when we think about how much money that is. So our Emily J6 found out what's behind the numbers and how you can be a smart shopper.
Get ready for a second round of shopping, this time online.
For instance, last year, retail apparel was discounted an average of 45% across the major retailers. That was a deeper discount than the 36% we saw the previous year.
And this year, expect to save even more. Macy's is offering anywhere from 50 to 70% off coats and apparel. And online giant Amazon says they'll be bringing back Cyber Week, offering lightning deals on items across the board every 30 minutes.
Consumer sentiment is at an 18-year high. When consumers are confident, they are confident to spend more money. And I think that we're going to see a continuation of greater online sales, greater online spending, and greater spending during this holiday season.
But before you pull out those credit cards, UNM Assistant Professor of Finance Riley White says, check out a number of retailers and compare prices before you check out.
Consumers should stay savvy. They should recognize they have choice. They should shop between a number of different items and see which opportunities are best for them.
And don't forget to look for coupon codes and sites offering free shipping.
I don't know a single large retailer that isn't concentrating on reducing their shipping costs and making them more attractive for sales to customers.
Lastly, remember, just because the deals are out there, it doesn't mean you have to buy them.
Now is not the time to go into debt. It is good to stay within your means. It's good to be conscientious about the expenditures that you actually have, and it's good to realize that because you have choice, you don't have to buy this thing from here at this time.
Emily J6, KOB, Eyewitness News 4.
All right, so one of the biggest pieces of advice, just because it's on sale doesn't mean you have to buy it, right?
What good advice that is, too.
Yeah.
Well, my wife and I have this thing every time that we're sitting down talking. She always says, hey, I found this really good deal. And I always say, oh, yeah, it was for sale then, right?
Right.
No, it was on sale. No, it was for sale. We have to make sure that we don't get blinded by some of those deals that we see.
That's interesting. So what are some of the things, maybe, I don't know, little psychological tips that we can put into our everyday life to let us know, all right, this is a want and not a need?
You need to be aware of that. I'm not saying that you don't get some of those wants. That's what Christmas time is for. Your loved ones buy things maybe that you wouldn't buy for yourself. I think it needs to stay in check, though. That's the big key here, is we need to make sure that we're not just going all crazy saying, hey, you know what, they said once that they want this or that and we're going to go get it. We need to make sure that we set a realistic expectation for ourselves. And don't be fooled by some of those deals. Seeing like the big red 30% off or something like that, there are scientists out there that say that releases a chemical in our brain that we just desire. Make sure that you're not getting salesed.
Right.
I would definitely make sure that you know what that price is, you know that it's a good deal before you get in on it.
Because I know we've seen reports on the national media about certain stores that claim to have 30, 40%, but those are the same prices all year long.
Any other day.
People don't realize that.
That's exactly right. Recently here with Cyber Monday, we were looking at a lot of the online deals, and we found more often than not, those online deals were the same prices they were a week, 2 weeks, 6 months ago. There weren't any Cyber Monday deals that I found, but they advertise them as such. They show, man, we're giving you $50 off or 15% off. You think, wow, this is a really good deal, when in reality it's no different than any other day.
So a lot of people want to be smart shoppers, and Emily mentioned in her story that finding promo codes is one way to do it.
Absolutely.
And I always do that when I shop online. I like Google where I'm trying to buy from and see if there's a promo code available. Sometimes it's a hit, sometimes it's a miss. But there are times times or things out there right now, especially targeting people, making them think, you know, like if I open, say for instance, a credit card with some certain retailer, I'm going to get 5, 10, 15, 20% off. How do we navigate those?
Try to avoid that as much as possible. Those in-store deals, unless you're buying something really, really big, the interest that you're going to end up paying on those store-focused credit cards can just kill you. It's not a good thing to do. Financially speaking, it's not something that you want to make a practice of. I would spend my own money. I mean, if someone's offering me 20% off if I sign up for XYZ credit card, I don't think that makes a whole lot of sense.
Same thing with points, right? Like if you spend $1,000 within 3 months, we'll give you 50,000, you know, flight points. Like
if you think about that, that's just forcing you to spend more money. I mean, a lot of those point systems aren't going to actually get you any tangible good, but rather you're going to have to end up spending more money to be able to use those points.
Okay.
That didn't make sense.
So the 5 big shopping days, they've passed right now, but we still have a few weeks until we actually hit, you know, the gift-giving time. What if you're in the position where, man, I overspent? What do we do?
Start budgeting for that now. I don't want to say take Christmas back or anything like that. But
right.
If you bought a TV and you're thinking, man, I don't need this new 70-inch, consider even taking it back to the store and getting a refund on that. What I would suggest is if you're thinking, hey, you know what, I'm out of budget here, start doing a few things. Start putting some money away to account for that overspending so that you're not saddled with some huge credit card bill or some huge interest payment come January 1st.
Now, for the people who do go shopping on these days, do we know how much of it is them shopping for others or them shopping for themselves?
I think that there is kind of a new trend coming out that we're all shopping for ourselves come this time of year.
Yeah, I mean,
do. I'll be honest.
Definitely.
I mean, it's something to keep in mind, especially when we're talking about wants versus needs. No one can better define that than yourself. If you're buying things for yourself, then you should keep those things in control.
All right, so tomorrow is a new day. So, you know, going forward, when is the target time that we should start preparing with about a minute left? Like, should we start preparing now for the gift-giving season, or?
Yeah, the earlier you start, the better. I think when it comes right down to it, the more we can do now, the more we can start setting aside, even if it's for next year. I know that that's a long way out, but the more that we can start planning, the more money we can put aside, the better off we'll be come that holiday season.
And also another quick question, how open should you be with family members about this is the limit that we're going to set?
I'm very open with my siblings. We all buy presents. There are 6 of us total, so it's a lot to keep in mind. We all buy one present for each other, and there's a very specific dollar amount that's assigned to that. I don't think that's a bad thing to do. All
right. Okay, so coming up, we're going to be back with Gage here, and he's going to talk about ways to prepare yourself to become financially fit for the next year. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm here with Gage Kemsley from Oxford Wealth Advisors. We were talking about spending here during the holiday season. So as we wind down 2018 and we head into 2019, you know, becoming financially fit is on a lot of people's resolution lists.
Absolutely.
So what are some things we can do to take control of our money?
I think it's better to think of this kind of like a roadmap. Think we're going on this journey. By December 31st, we want to be financially fit. So what are the steps that we need to take now, and what are the steps that we're going to need to take in 2019 to be able to get to our destination? My wife and I are huge fans of road trips. We love to jump in the car and travel somewhere. And if we're thinking, hey, we're going to travel across the country, then there's a lot of work that goes into that. So one of the biggest tips that I suggest is start setting a budget now.
Okay.
New year, new me. Get started on a budget. Write down your specific expenses. You know, I pay $90 for my water bill. I pay $75 for my gas bill. Sit down with your spouse so that you can start working through some of those. I kind of think of that as like the foundation there. That's the roadmap that we need to get from the destination where we are to the destination we want to get to.
You know, also when it comes to writing all those numbers down, sometimes, I mean, people may put it off because it can be very anxiety inducing,
Absolutely.
right? I mean, what are some ways to get over that I don't want to deal with it right now mentality?
I think, I've said this before, I think that this is kind of like a trip to the dentist. Nobody ever wants to go to the dentist, but if I've got a toothache that I know, hey, I've got an issue here, I know that this is a problem, and that anxiety, that discomfort you feel in your stomach thinking about your finances, the first step, you got to just sit down and start hashing out some of those details. Grab a piece of paper, grab a pen, sit down with your spouse and start writing down exactly what those expenses are. Now, everyone knows that they should be keeping a weekly or a bi-weekly or a monthly budget, but I'm thinking even bigger than that. Let's start looking at a budget over a year's time frame.
Wow.
So that we know exactly where we want to get to when December 31st rolls around.
Now, are there any specific rules as to what percentage of your income should go to certain things, like your housing, your vehicle, other extra services?
Usually, in terms of debt service, what I like to see when I'm sitting down with someone and saying, hey, this is the income that you're generating, these are the debts that you need to pay, that shouldn't account for more than 50%. Now, everyone has kind of a different feel on this. Everyone's got a different financial need, but try to keep expenses as low as possible. Try to keep them under that 50% target. We should be saving. I've heard some people say, hey, we should be saving as much as 10 or 15% to retirement accounts, to savings accounts, different things like that. So we want to make sure that we're budgeting for those things as well.
And when we create a budget, like a line item of our expenses throughout the month or throughout the year, then we can kind of see, oh wait, maybe I don't need to spend $15 a month on Spotify.
Exactly.
And then $10 a month on Netflix. Like, all those little services do add up, right?
Absolutely. There's a reason those subscription services are so popular. A lot of people investing in those companies because a lot of us are paying it without even realizing it. Having a budget will show you exactly the money that you're spending on those different pieces.
And when it comes to cash versus card, I know that I've read several things that say that having cash in your wallet definitely gives you that more like, I'm going to hold on to this mentality versus putting a debit card through something and seeing the transaction post 3 days later.
No kidding.
So that would help, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Stick with cash as much as you can to keep your budget. Now, some of the things that you budget for, like your car payment, your utilities, even your house payment, you can't really pay in cash. What I usually suggest is set those up on a direct withdrawal out of your account so that you can see the money leaving, and then keep a very close eye on your bank accounts so that you know exactly how much you have in there.
Now, I've read about some people who are trying to become financially fit who come up with these things like, no spending week. What are some tips so people can kind of like control their spending, where they don't, get coffee on the way to work or, run to a fast food restaurant for lunch? Because all those little charges do add up.
They absolutely do. I'm a big fan of rewarding yourself. A lot of people say treat yourself nowadays.
Right, treat yourself.
Treat yourself.
Right.
I think if you set a goal and you meet that goal, you should treat yourself. I think you should have a reward for that. So maybe you set a goal saying, you know what, I eat out too much. I'm going to take lunch 4 days out of this week, and then on Friday I'm going to go out with some friends and we're going to go get lunch somewhere. I think that's a perfectly appropriate way to stay within a reasonably set budget.
Okay, so moving on from the budgets, when it comes to credit, working on credit is something that a lot of people, think that they need to do.
Oh, yeah.
And apparently, like, credit rules are changing or the way the scores are changing. Go into detail about that for us.
Right now, there are 6 factors, 6 things that our credit score is calculated off of. A lot of people have misconceptions about which ones are important and which ones aren't. So the 3 important ones, OCD. Remember, OCD, on-time payments. We've got to make sure that our on-time payments are above 98%. C is we want to make sure that we're keeping our credit limits in check. If we've got $50,000 available in all of our different credit cards and everything like that, we want to be less than 35% of that. And then the D is for derogatory marks. What that means is bankruptcies, collections, liens. Don't want any of those things showing up. Those are what are called the hard impacts on our credit score. The 3 others that we see, the first one, which has a very, very low impact, are the number of accounts that you have, the age of the accounts, and then hard inquiries. So when you go to the bank and apply for a new credit card or a new loan, they'll check your credit. That's called a hard inquiry. A lot of people think that goes against them. It's not a big deal. It's a very low impact effect on your total credit score. It may decrease it by a few points.
Right. So when it comes to this new score, like I was reading that they're going to take a look at checking accounts now and saving accounts. What is that going to do for people's scores?
That kind of leads me into my next thought here is it's important to get out of debt, but it's more important to stay out of debt. So one of the things that credit scores don't currently look at is how much cash you have on hand. What's your emergency fund? And in reality, that can be a very, very good indicator. If you're applying for a car loan, the company is saying, okay, yeah, we're going to loan you $15,000. If you say, hey, you know what, I've got a fund at the bank that already has $15,000 in it, the bank should treat your credit score higher. You should see an increase there because you've got the collateral to back that. So I think this is a good thing. And I think people should be putting some money away into an emergency fund to help protect themselves.
You know, when it comes to debt, reports out there say that Americans have debt.
Oh, yeah.
So how do people chip away at that throughout this year? Say this is the year where 2019 is it. I'm going to be credit card debt free, and start saving. How do they get out of it?
I think the best way to do this is what's called a debt snowball. What you do is you look at all the different debt sources that you have. You pick the biggest interest rate first. That's the way that I think that it should be done, the highest interest rate. So I've got a couple of credit cards in my pocket. I go through and say, okay, which one of these credit cards has the highest interest rate? I pay that one down first. The moment I pay that one down and it's paid off in full, then I look at the next highest rate. And I put all the money that I was putting at that previous credit card onto this other one. And then I start looking at my car loans. And then I start looking at my home loan. I just start getting real aggressive with paying down debt to make sure that I'm not paying interest to someone else.
And how do we keep people on that path? I know it sounds like at first a lot of people are like, oh, I'm so gung-ho about this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to, wipe all this clean. And then, something else happens. Life happens.
Like those gym memberships, right? You know, gym memberships spike up in January, and then by February, nobody's going to the gym anymore.
Right.
It's the same kind of thing with our finances. We need to make sure that we're constantly looking. We should constantly be looking at the different positions that we have. We should constantly be checking our bank balances, our credit card balances, our loan balances to make sure that those are all in check. That could be one of your financial goals. Make sure that you set these goals so that, just like a roadmap, you know the steps that you're making to get to that destination come December 31st of next year.
I know that we did a story not too long ago, within the last few months, about millennials and the amount of money they have in their savings accounts, and it's pretty minimal.
It is.
How do people start to save, and what's a good emergency fund threshold to have?
I don't want to scare anyone with saying this, but we should have 6 to 12 months of our living expenses saved. For most New Mexicans, that means we need somewhere between $15,000 and $30,000 saved in the bank.
Wow.
That's a huge amount, and a lot of people think, they see that and they get anxious. They start thinking, man, there's no way. I've got $500 in there now. There's no way that I'll ever hit that target. I think that we should start small, though. Every paycheck, there should be some little amount that we budget out of our income that goes directly into that emergency fund, in a position where, you know what, if the car breaks down, if the transmission done, we can tap into that rather than tapping into our credit cards.
So that could almost be treated like, say, a monthly payment to yourself.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. You should see it that way. You should pay yourself.
Right. Okay, when it comes to retirement, that can be like another one of those anxiety-provoking type of things to talk about or think about. So what are some things that people should do going into the new year, or at least think about doing?
The one goal I suggest this year, start a Roth. Or if you have a Roth, fund the Roth. Now, for those of you that don't know, a Roth account is funded with after-tax money, meaning we pay the taxes on it, we put it into this position, but then it grows tax-free. In essence, we're setting ourselves up for a tax-free retirement, and I think that that's a genius thing to do, especially right now with the tax rates being so low.
So how much should you be putting towards your Roth if you have one, or thinking about opening one?
This is going to be a very diplomatic answer, as much as you can afford.
Okay.
Now, in addition to that, I'd like to encourage everyone to check and see if you have a 401k at work, see if they offer a Roth 401k, and then start contributing as much money as you can into that. Make sure that you're getting that employer match as well.
So how are we as a country doing when it comes to contributing to these types of accounts?
I don't think we're as bad as we think we are, but I think that there's always room for improvement. Looking at the money that's going into these retirement accounts right now, it's important for us to save as much as we can. I see people retire all the time, and a lot of them are prepared, and a lot of them are not as prepared as they should be.
Okay, and as we head into next year, W-2s are going to be going out in the next few weeks.
Do you believe that?
All of these topics are raising my heart rate right now, by the way. So with about a couple minutes left, what should people be doing to get prepared for that this tax season?
Now is the time to start focusing on our taxes. So if you have a CPA or a tax preparer,
or my wife,
or your wife,
who does it?
Sure.
Thank goodness.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
What I would suggest is we need to start thinking about what we're going to do for our tax year. We should decide now what it is that we need to do. If you have a tax preparer, if you have a CPA, I think it's better to book an appointment with them in December than it is to wait until after you start receiving some of those tax documents. I mean, there's a lot of people and they say, I always ask, do you get tax forward planning from your CPA or your tax preparer? Very, very rarely do they. It's because they don't give their tax preparer a chance to give them any advice or give them any recommendations. If we're doing that before the end of the year, then that's something that we can get out in front of. It helps guide the direction that we're going to be going down that financial path.
All right, a lot to think about. Gage, thank you so much for stopping by.